Jan, she did an excellent job leading our communion thoughts this morning. I don't think anybody's ever cranked this microphone that high before. That was awesome. So, we're going to start talking about something new this morning. We spent several weeks talking about different names of God, and appreciate the feedback that I've gotten back from so many of you about just how insightful that was and how it kind of changed your perspective a little bit on who God is and how he functions. And if you missed any of those lessons or want to share those with anyone, I invite you to go to our YouTube channel. All those sermons are available there, and you're welcome to share that link with anybody that you want to, any of those different names of God. But we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit this morning, and we're going to talk about things that are broken, okay? That's going to be our theme today. And so what I wanted to allow you to do for just a few seconds, I want to give you the opportunity to just kind of share with each other something that maybe you've broken it, or maybe it was something that got broken and kind of frustrated you. You had to get it fixed. Whether that's something as small as a dish, a coffee mug, something like that, or something bigger. Your car broke down. I don't know, a whole section of your house collapsed. I don't know, whatever it is. Just something that got broken recently. And just share that with somebody around you. And not only what it was that was broken, but like how did that make you feel? Like, how did you deal with it? Okay? On your mark, you say go. Okay, let me ask this real quick. Just show of hands. How many of you, something was broken? It wasn't your fault, but it was something that you valued or whatever, and maybe somebody else broke it. Maybe somebody crashed into you or dropped something that you liked. Whatever. How many it was somebody else's fault? Raise your hand real high. Let me see. There's a handful of you. Okay. How many of you did the breaking? Like whatever it was, you broke it. Like it was, oh, thank you for confessing this morning. All right. How many of you have no idea whose fault it was? It just broke. Anybody? A few of those too. Okay. So we got a lot of different things that break down our lives, right? And it could be something insignificant. Some of you might have shared, like, the handle broke off my favorite coffee mug. I've seen people almost move to tears because of such things, okay? Because it had, not just because it held coffee, but because of the sentimental value attached to it. I've also seen people move to tears when things like air conditioners break down and cars break down because they got to pay that much money to get it fixed. There's all sorts of things in our lives that get broken. Sometimes it's by accident. I remember several years ago being at my in-laws' house, reaching over to flip off a light switch, and there was a decorative plate right next to the light switch. And just, I flipped on the light switch, and as I'm withdrawing my hand, just my sleeve grazed that thing, and it went tumbling. And I caught it for a second. You know what I'm saying? Like it was flipping, and it hit both hands. I was like, and then it flipped again out of my hands onto the floor. But it didn't break. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Uncle Buck. Anybody ever seen the movie Uncle Buck? When he gets the plate and he's like, he drops on the floor and it doesn't break. He's like, oh, unbreakable. And then he breaks it on the piano. You need to watch that clip. Anyway, I thought, it didn't break. But there was one little chip on one edge that kind of had shot across the room. And my father-in-law glued it back in place. And then the next time I went to their house, it wasn't on the shelf anymore. I'm really not sure whatever became of that plate, but they wanted to move it from my, field of vision or my proximity. But it was an accident. It wasn't like I went over there and go, you know what, I'm just going to knock this plate off. I didn't mean to. It happened. Some things I've broken in anger. Maybe you've done this before where something's not working and you get so frustrated that you just go ahead and break it all the way. Anybody else done that? A few of you, thank you. All right. We'll have a support group for ourselves later where you're so mad and you're angry and you just almost make it worse. It may not have been that bad to begin with, but I'm so frustrated with it that I tear it up and make it worse. Maybe that's just me. Some of you, you didn't do it. I mean, how many of you have been, you've been driving like you're supposed to in your car and somebody else runs into you. Somebody dings your door getting out of their car in the parking lot. It wasn't your fault, and yet you got to deal with the consequences of it. It was something that was important to you, valuable to you, and somebody else broke it. I mean, we've got all these different things that happen in our lives that get broken. And whether it's intentional, whether it's on accident, whether we have nothing to do with it, we got to deal with the consequences of something that used to work and doesn't, that used to be in one piece and now is in several. That's what I want us to be thinking of today and over the next couple of weeks when we talk about this concept of broken. Not a dish, not our smartphone screens, but think about things like marriages, friendships, broken down physical health, emotional health, jobs, even our faith. Things that aren't necessarily as tangible and yet are as destructive and hurtful to us when they get broken. And some of those things get broken by accident. We break friendships because somebody says the wrong thing. Somebody thought something was funny and it was a joke and it was actually hurtful. Somebody didn't pay attention to their health issues and now, things are breaking down. Somebody, did something wrong at the job and it wasn't intentional. They didn't mean for it to happen, but now they've lost a job because of it. Sometimes we break things out of anger. We break friendships, we break relationships, marriages because of yelling, because of retaliation. They did this, and so I'm going to do this back. We get frustrated. We get frustrated with God. We get frustrated with church people, and we get angry, and we break those relationships. Some things aren't even under our control. We didn't do it. The company just laid people off, and I just lost my job. I had no control over that. I was doing a good job. I'm the one that got gossiped about. That's why the friendship ended. It wasn't me. I'm the spouse that got cheated on. I'm the kid that got abused. It wasn't my fault. I may have done everything right. I may have done everything I was supposed to do, and yet still things fell apart. Things broke. I didn't do the breaking, but I'm dealing with the consequences of it. I want you to keep these things in mind. We're talking about this morning times in our lives when something gets broken, something that was good falls apart, something that we look at and may even in our own mind say, this is beyond repair. This can't be fixed. This marriage is done. This friendship is over. My faith is shattered. Whatever it is that we're feeling or looking at and seeing is broken and feeling like this used to be full of life. This used to be something that brings me joy. It used to be something I relied on, and now it's lifeless. It's empty. There's no joy. There's no communication. There's no connection. And maybe that's where some of you find yourselves this morning. Maybe some of you sitting here this morning are in a marriage relationship, and you're just looking at, man, this is dead. We're just coexisting. We used to have fun. We used to share. We used to really experience life together. But now we just kind of pass each other in the hallways. We almost just kind of nod at each other like we're just acquaintances. We sit in silence across from each other at the table. We can barely tolerate being in the same room with each other. Maybe it's your relationship with your kids, or maybe your relationship with your parents, where you used to have fun, you used to be close, you used to do a lot of fun activities, you used to talk and share and laugh and cry and create all these memories together. And now if we talk, it's just to find out where the kids want to be dropped off next, where I need to pick them up at. Let's make sure we got all of our homework done. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about our schedules tomorrow, and that's about it. Or any conversation we have always end up in just yelling and somebody screaming and storming out. Maybe you can look at one of the friendships that you have or used to have. And it used to be so meaningful and such an important part of your life. You spend lots of time together and used to share and encourage, share with each other and encourage each other. And now you might say, hey, how's it going, as you pass by each other. If you talk at all. Maybe it was a connection with your church family. And you used to be such a source of strength and such a source of encouragement. And you loved seeing that person or those people when you got together at church and something happened. The wrong thing was said. Something was taken the wrong way. Feelings got hurt. And now we might say good morning and not even mean it when we say it as we pass each other in the lobby. And even if we try to identify why that relationship is broken. Whether it was something that just happened by accident. We didn't mean for it to happen. Somebody said the wrong thing. I took the wrong action. I shouldn't have done that. It was an accident. The relationship is still broken, or maybe it's out of anger and frustration. Things built up for a while and kept building up, and I kept getting frustrated, and I couldn't do anything about it, and now everything's falling apart. Or maybe I had nothing to do with it. It wasn't my fault. I'm the one whose heart is broken. I'm the one who got left. I'm the one who got yelled at for no reason. I'm the one who's having to deal with something that I didn't do. Some of you this morning sitting in this room may be going, man, I don't have any relationships like that. If that's the case, man, praise God. Be thankful. Treasure those connections that you have, because it's a good thing. Some of you may be thinking, well, this particular relationship it's not broken, but I can see the cracks. I can see the direction that we're headed. Some of you may be thinking to yourselves, this particular relationship is wrecked, and I don't know if anything is going to be able to fix it. So today, for a few more minutes, we want to talk about broken relationships. Broken relationships. And I hope to give you just a message of hope today. And I'm not going to guarantee, I will, this is my disclaimer. Whatever I share with you today, I will not guarantee that you'll walk out here going, okay, everything's fixed, 100%, no problem. I just want to share some insights with you today. Some things that may help in fixing those things. It may not be an automatic fix, but it'll help move you towards repair, restoration. One thing that I want to kind of acknowledge in the first place, because if you're new here, if you haven't been here very often, you may not know this, but with our church family, I've talked about broken relationships before. Probably on more than one occasion. And so I don't want to rehash everything that I've said before, and I don't want you to roll your eyes and go, oh, we've heard this. Hopefully there's some fresh material here this morning, but I think it's something that we can look at and go, man, this is a problem. This is something that may have not been a problem when we talked about it before. Now it is. And maybe, again, if everything's good in your life, I would almost guarantee you know somebody who's dealing with a broken relationship right now. Something that needs to be repaired. But I want to challenge you with this morning. I believe, please hear this. I believe in the power of God to fix whatever is damaged, to heal whatever is hurting, to repair whatever is broken. I believe that God can do it. And I believe that if I'm His child, if I have given my life to Him and I have been washed in the blood of His Son, Jesus, that when I call on Him and I ask Him, God, would you please fix whatever it is that's broken in my life, including my relationships, I believe God has the power to do that. I believe that He has the power and the desire to do that. A few weeks ago, as we were talking about these different names of God, we talked about the name that means the Lord who heals. And we talked about that we have a God who is still able to heal our body, who is still able to heal our souls, who is still able to heal our relationships. But here's the thing. If you ask me how He does that, I would confidently look you right in the eye and say, I have no idea. I don't know how He does it. But I believe in His power to do it. And I hope to make that a little more clear. I really believe in God's power to heal and to fix things, even though sometimes I can't explain how He does it. Here's what I mean. In the Old Testament, there's a story in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 5. And it's saying, and this isn't going to be on your screen, so if you want to look it up and check my facts, make sure I'm telling you the story straight, feel free to do that. But in 2 Kings chapter 5, there's a story told about a man named Naaman. And Naaman wasn't even part of the people of God. He wasn't an Israelite. He was from a completely different nation. But he had leprosy. And one of his servant girls was from Israel. And she said, you know what? There's a prophet in Israel that has healing powers. His name's Elisha. You need to go see him. And so he goes to the nation of Israel. He's sent to the nation of Israel, and he ends up at Elisha's house. And he's thinking that this prophet's going to come out and do, I don't know, some kind of dance and wave his hands in the air and ointments and lotions and some kind of, ceremony to heal his leprosy. And Elisha doesn't even come to the door. Elisha sends a servant to the door. The servant basically opens the door and says, if you would, just go down to the Jordan River, jump in 7 times. You're good to go. And Naaman's mad. I drove all the way here. You could have told me, you could have sent me a letter and said, hey, go jump in the river. I can do that. I came all the way here and you didn't even come out. And he decides he's just not going to do it. And not only that, just the fact that the guy didn't come to the door, but jumping in the Jordan River, he's like, man, we got cleaner rivers at home. Why do I got to jump in that nasty thing? But his servants say, well, if he had come out and done some kind of funky thing, wouldn't you have done what he asked you to do? Wouldn't you have let him do it? Well, yeah. Well, then why not do this? So Naaman goes to the Jordan River. And I don't know if he cannonballed in. I don't know if he walked in. We don't know for sure. Bible doesn't say. He went in the river and went under 7 times. And on the 7th time, when he comes up out of the water, he's completely clean. This skin disease, this disease that he's been battling forever, is gone. Now, let me ask you, how did Naaman get healed of his leprosy? It couldn't have been magic powers in the river. Other people had jumped in that river. I mean, if that was the case, there'd be hundreds, maybe thousands of people on the riverbanks ready to jump in on a daily basis, right? So it couldn't have been just the magic of the river. And it couldn't have been the number of times. I mean, 7, 15, doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered if Naaman had jumped in 50 times. That leprosy was not going away until the power of Almighty God intervened. And the reason, just understand, Elisha didn't even come out and rub anything on his hands. He didn't scratch the leprosy off. It was just God saying, okay, you're clean. And the reason that we know that God had a hand in it, the reason that we know that Naaman was healed by the power of God is because what we see the end result. Naaman was healed. And I don't know the science of that. I don't know how God created the molecules to get rid of the disease molecules and cells. I have no idea. I can't explain the science of it, but I know it happened. I believe that it happened. Does that make sense? And by the same principle, I believe that God has a power to repair any of my relationships that get broken. And I may not be able to explain exactly how he does it, and I may not be able to scientifically diagram for you, well, here's what God did to heal the emotional part of my brain to make everything work better. I don't know. I asked God to heal it, and he did. I believe he does. Does that make sense? Now, I am going to talk about what's required on our part. Don't worry. But I want to get this point across this morning in a way that I don't think I have before when we talked about emotional relationship healing from God. That there is something supernatural that takes place when God chooses to go to work. That there may be actions required on my part. There may be things that I have to do. Naaman had to go jump in the river. But the water of the river is not what healed Naaman. It was the power of God. There may be some things that I need to do to make this relationship better, but I need to understand and believe in and trust in the divine power of Almighty God to fix what's broken. And I want to start with that foundation today. I want you to believe in that and to trust in that today. And the reason that we know that God heals our broken relationships, especially when we ask him to, is by the end result. In Galatians chapter 5, the Apostle Paul says, here's what the fruit of the Spirit looks like. Here's what is produced when God is a part of your life, when God is a part of your marriage, when God is a part of your job, when God is a part of your daily activities. Here's what it looks like. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. When God is at work, when his Spirit is moving, here's what's produced. My marriage is more full of love and understanding and patience. My kids We have a mutual love for each other. We have peace. We have joy. This friendship that used to be broken is now, we go out of our way to bless each other. We hold our tongue and keep in the words that we shouldn't say that might hurt somebody else's feelings, because that's what we prayed would happen. The reason that we can tell God fixed our relationships, had a hand in healing what was broken, is the end result. Okay? If you get nothing else, if you've tuned out everything to this point or are going to fall asleep for the rest of the time, please hear this. I believe in the power of God to supernaturally heal my broken relationships. And I may not be able to explain it, but I trust it to be true. And I want that for you as well. But like we said, Naaman did have to jump in the river. There were actions required on his part. So what do I need to do? I'm asking God to heal this. I know it's going to be God that does heal it. Do I just need to sit and twiddle my thumbs and wait for all of a sudden this person that I've had this disconnection with now to come back and go, I don't know, something came over me and now I want to be your best friend? Is that how it works? I think there's actions required on our part. I think healing is taking place through the power of God, and I think there's actions that need to take place in us as well. So let's go through those real quick. What are some things that I need to be doing as God is healing this broken relationship? First thing I need to do is I need to stop focusing on the other person's speck. Let me explain that. Luke chapter 6 and verse 42, Jesus is talking to his disciples and talking to the crowd that's there. He says, how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Jesus says, how logical is it for me to have a 2x4 sticking out of my eye and going, you got a piece of dirt, let me get that for you? That'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it? If somebody with that huge thing coming out of their face is coming at you and going, let me get that dirt, what would you do? Get away from me, right? Jesus says you can't even see to get that little speck. You're ignoring a giant problem on your own part because you're focused so much on what's going on with the other person. Don't do that. And if I am going to be a part of God healing this broken relationship, I've got to stop focusing on your speck. But I know me, I have a tendency, especially when I'm angry with you, when you have hurt my feelings, when I'm envious of what you have. I will focus on only the things that I don't like about you. And I will never allow myself to see the good things. Or I'll focus on why you're at fault for this relationship being broken. I'll focus on all the reasons, all the things that you've done to mess things up, and not even acknowledge that I had anything to do with it. If I want to take part in fixing the damage, I've got to quit focusing on everything that's wrong with you and start paying attention to, what did I do? And maybe not even what did I do, what can I do to make this better? I got to stop focusing on the other person's speck. Second thing I got to do, I got to stop keeping score. I got to stop keeping score. I call it relationship tally marks. If I could just have, a whiteboard or a chalkboard or even just a scratch pad, and just every time that you say something I don't like, something that hurts my feelings, or you do something that irritates me, and just make a little check. And how many tally marks would you get? And maybe you do the same thing to me, but now we're keeping score. Now we're going to see, you've messed up 52 times, and I've only messed up 37. So obviously, it's your fault that this is all messed up. That sounds so juvenile and silly. And yet that's what we do. We keep score. We try to decide who's more at fault. We bring up the past and go, yeah, what I did was bad, but here's what you did. Or here's the 3 things you did before I ever did my thing. My focus becomes on winning, not listening. My focus becomes on conquering and being right, not respecting you and not trying to come up with a solution. I'm all about blaming you for whatever it is that you did to break this thing up, and justifying whatever reason I might even acknowledge, yeah, there's some things that I might have done to break this relationship, but you made me. I got to quit keeping score. Nothing good comes from it. All it does is get me more frustrated at you and create a bigger divide, a bigger gap than was already there. I got to quit focusing on the other person's speck. I got to quit keeping score. And I need to stop withholding grace. I need to stop withholding grace. And grace is more than, we've talked about, grace is more than just mercy. Mercy means I just don't give you the punishment. Whatever punishment you should get, whatever consequences you should receive, I say, let's not do that. Grace takes that a step further. Not only am I not going to punish you, not only am I not going to make you go through those consequences, I'm actually going to go on my way to bless you, to do something for you, to be a blessing in your life. That's what grace is. That's what God has done for us. Our God is a merciful God. Our God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross so that we wouldn't have to pay the penalty for our sins. That's mercy. But God takes it a step further with his grace. And says, not only do I not want you to pay this back, not only do I not want you to try to earn it because you can't, not only that, I want to bless you. I want to take care of you. I want to give you joy and peace in your life. And you don't deserve any of that either. But I love you that much, I want to do that for you. I want to make this life here the best that it possibly can be until we get to spend forever together. That's grace. And that's what God has done for us. And Paul says that's what we need to be in the habit of doing for each other. He says in Colossians chapter 3, bear with each other, forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord has forgiven you. How many things has God forgiven you of? You want to start a list? How much paper would fill this room of all the different things that God has forgiven us of if we started trying to write that down? God forgives us all the time. Sometimes when we don't even ask for it. A lot of times we don't even ask for it. Sometimes we think we might even be justified in doing it. And God forgives us anyway. Paul says that's the heart you need to have for each other. Stop withholding that from each other. Stop withholding grace. Be a blessing to the other person. Not just, here's the difference. You do something that hurt my feelings and I say, well, I'm just not going to retaliate. Great. Way to go. I mean, I guess that's mercy. Grace says, not only am I going to not retaliate, what can I do to help you? I know you said something that really hurt. Maybe you meant it, maybe you didn't, but what can I do to be a blessing to you? That's hard to do. Doesn't come natural to us. Paul says that's why we got to create the habit of bearing with each other, putting up with each other, forgiving each other in the same way that God has forgiven us. I need to be a forgiver. I need to value the grace that I have received from God so much, it needs to overflow out of me into the lives of other people. And you may be sitting there going, yeah, but you don't know. You don't know what he said. You don't know what she did. You don't know how bad I hurt. And I would agree with you. You're probably right. I don't know how hard it was. I don't know how hurtful it was. Whatever it was that severed that relationship, whatever it was that caused things to break down, I may not know that story. And even if I know the story, I may not know how deep that pain was. You're exactly right. And we live in a culture that is all about us having our rights. I have the right to be angry. I have the right to be upset. I have the right to hold a grudge. I have the right to get that person out of my life and have nothing to do with them. You're exactly right. You do. I'm not saying you don't. Paul's saying, even if that's your right, don't let that be your action. Don't let that be your go-to. Stop withholding grace from other people. Stop withholding grace from the people that need it, even if they're not asking for it. If I have a relationship that needs to be fixed, I want to rely on the power of God to fix it, but I need to take my part in letting go of the hurt, forgiving, moving forward. And I'm not saying you're going to walk out of here going, okay, I've forgiven everybody that's ever hurt me in my life. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time and effort. But this is what we need to be moving towards. Grace. In the same way that God has given us. I got to move quickly. Another action step that I need to take is I need to use my words. This is a hard one for me. I'm just confessing to you. I need to use my words. And one reason that a broken friendship, a broken church connection, a broken marriage remains broken is because I choose not to communicate about it. I choose not to talk about it. I choose to punish you by giving you the silent treatment. I choose to ignore things. I choose to just let things stew. And things may be a problem. There may be some things that are building up and causing the cracks to come. And I'm just not saying anything about it. And I'm just going to hold my tongue. And part of it, for some of us, we just don't want to have the conflict. We don't want to have the argument, so let's just not talk about it. And if I keep not talking about it, eventually it'll just go away. And if I just pretend it's not there, eventually, it's going to just kind of take care of itself. Or I'll just kind of learn to deal with this dysfunctional relationship that I'm in and just be satisfied with it. That's not the kind of life God wants us to have. That's not the kind of people He wants us to be. And then there's some of us that we won't talk about it, we won't communicate about it, because that's our way of getting back at the other person. And if I don't talk about it, I feel justified in you continuing to be hurtful to me. And I'm punishing you because I'm just not talking about it. This comes up when people say, someone says to you, well, what's wrong? Nothing. And your whole body is screaming, everything is wrong. No, fine. Everything's good. I need to use my words. Even if it's difficult for me to say, even if it's difficult for the other person to hear. And not to use my words in an attacking way and go, let me tell you everything that's wrong with you. We've already talked about that. We're not going to focus on the specs. We're going to be honest about, and as objective as we can be about, here's what's going on. Here's what's broken. And I want to talk about it because I want to fix it. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 25, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we're all members of one family. We need to speak. We need to use our words in an honest and sincere way. We need to be honest, not intentionally hurtful, but honest about things that are going on between the two of us. And it may be difficult, and you may not want to hear what I have to say. I may not really want to say it. But if we're going to fix the damage, we got to talk about it. And the other way that I need to use my words is sometimes I need to be the one to step forward and apologize. And even if we look at the tally marks and we look at how you've got 3 or 4 times more tally marks than I do, you've done a whole lot more things to hurt this relationship than I have, forget about keeping score. This is about us being honest and me acknowledging my hand in it. Here's what I have done to break this relationship, and I am sorry. Thank you. It's hard for us to say, isn't it? I'm sorry. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, beginning verse 23, he says, if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. Go and be reconciled to your brother and then come offer your gift. Jesus says, that was a different way to do church than it is now. Jesus says, if you're at church and you realize me and him, me and her, there's a thing between us. Stop worshiping right then. Go fix it. And then come back and worship some more. Don't leave that hanging. Don't leave that unresolved. Do what you can. And here's the thing. You be the one to take the action. I have to go and use my words with you. I have to be the initiator of the conversation. That's what Jesus calls me to do. If I recognize there's a problem and I have the ability to do something about it, I need to take the initiative to do that and use my words and apologize and work through it. Don't just leave it silent. because the damage only gets worse. And finally, the last thing I need to do is I need to share some gold. I need to share some gold. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. If you got your Bibles there, mark this verse if you haven't already. Circle it, put stars by it, underline it, highlight it. If there's a way to make special attention somehow in your Bible app, do that. Here's what Jesus says: in every aspect of your life, do to others what you would have them do to you. Because this sums up the law and the prophets. Jesus says everything, this whole scripture, this whole Bible is wrapped up in this. Do to other people what you would have them do to you. We call it the golden rule. Been calling it that since the 1600s. Because of the value of implementing this in our lives. This is the gold standard. This is the best that we can do. If somebody says, what does it look like? What should it look like to be a Christian, to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? It should look like this. And this should be what I'm demonstrating to other people on a regular basis, especially the people who we may have a damaged, broken relationship. Now, I want you to pay special attention to what Jesus says here. Jesus doesn't say, do to others so that they will do for you. That's called manipulation. That's not what Jesus says here. And yet that's what some of us do sometimes. Okay, well, I'll be nice to them so that, that's what Jesus said, right? So that they'll be nice to me. So that they'll do good things for me. That's just selfishness. That's just getting what you want. Jesus also doesn't say, do to others what they did to you. That's called retaliation, revenge. That is not what Jesus is about. I'm not supposed to go around going, well, here's what they did, so here's what I'm going to do back. I'm going to get even. We never get even. We never do. We always do just a little bit more than what somebody else did to us. And then they're going to do a little bit more than what we did to them. And then we're going to do a little bit more than what they did to us. And that relationship just keeps breaking. The cracks things keep falling apart. That's not what Jesus says here. And Jesus doesn't say, do to others as they deserve to be done to. Whatever it is that they deserve, go ahead and do that. Even if I have the right to give them what they deserve. That's not what Jesus calls us to. Do to them what you would have them do to you, even if they don't. The way you want to be treated is how you should treat other people, even if nobody ever treats you that way. That's the golden rule that Jesus calls us to. And that kind of heart, that kind of attitude, those kinds of actions are what's going to help heal this broken relationship. Whatever caused the damage in the first place, this can help heal it. If it's part of our mindset, if it's part of what we want to do on a regular basis. So if I want to be respected, if I want to be forgiven, if I want this person to make me a priority in their life, if I want them to spend time with me, if I want them to communicate with me, if I want them to show me grace and be a blessing to me, I have to do those things for them. Understanding that they may never do those things for me. But that's not what the rule is. The rule is do what needs to be done. Do to others what you wish they would do for you, whether they ever do or not. Because that's what this is all about. If I want to heal this relationship, I've got to share some gold. I've got to use this golden rule. I've got to start implementing it a little bit more. I need to wrap up. I want to finish by sharing with you. I don't want to gross you out, but just a personal story. When I was a teenager, I had a wart on my pinky toe, and it grew. I'm not going to get real descriptive, but it was just kind of gross. And I tried ointments and sprays and whatever else that you could get over the counter to deal with it, and finally went to the doctor. And the doctor, looked at it and was like, well, basically what we're going to have to do, we can't just, you couldn't even just freeze it off. We're going to have to do a little bit of surgery and cut this thing out, because it had roots that were going down into my foot. Okay, that's as descriptive as I'm going to get. And so I remember him, giving me the shots to deaden my toe and carving this thing out, because they had to get down to the roots of it, to the core of it. And once that happened, then it started to heal. Then the medication that I added started to work. And I share that nasty story with you because I think sometimes that the reason that a particular relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship with parents, with kids, co-workers, church folks, if there's any damage there, if there's anything that's broken, maybe sometimes the reason that it won't heal is because I haven't gotten to the core of the problem yet. And the core of the problem may be me and my own heart. And if I start with me, and if I start with my heart and my connection with God, then that, once I deal with that, that's going to empower me to do these things that will help. God said to his people through the prophet Ezekiel in Ezekiel chapter 36, he says, if you want me to, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And folks, I think this is where we need to start this morning. I think we need to take an honest look at any of our relationships, even if it's just one that's broken. Let's be honest with ourselves about it. Let's be honest about what we had, what part we played in causing the damage. Let's be committed to what we can do to help fix it. Let's ask God to intervene and believe that he will. But maybe the place that he needs to start is not with them, with me. Maybe my stony, stubborn heart is getting in the way of him doing what he could do. So maybe that's our prayer this morning. God, start here. This relationship is broken. You start with me. Don't start with them. Start with me. Give me something new here so that I can have something repaired out here. So we're going to stand together. We're going to sing a song together. And I would invite you as we sing, if you recognize my heart towards this other person has become rock hard. And I want God to fix that first. I would invite you to come forward and share that with us. Or any need you may have. Share with us today while we stand and sing.